What's up, brothers? Welcome back to another vid. I'm surprised I actually haven't talked about this one before because it was probably the biggest obstacle I had to overcome and the biggest thing holding me back, right? It was kind of the pain that got me to change in the first place, and that is social anxiety. Now, I'm just going to really just give my story at the end. Whatever lessons come out of it, great. I'm definitely going to create a full guide on how to overcome it because I've helped many other men overcome it. I've completely overcome it myself. And it's an absolutely debilitating disease, condition. I think it's mental health disorder, whatever that may be. Now, social anxiety is a continuum right now, so it's not you have it or you don't. It's how much of it you actually have, right? You can lean all the way to the end of getting cold sweats, not going out in social situations, or you can lean also the way to the end of being very socially confident, being the most charismatic one in the room, having zero inhibition in social situations. So for me, my entire life, I have been a much more stimulated individual. Right, I was the spaz when I was a kid, high dopamine, high drive, a good amount of ADHD, right, always on to the next thing. My sympathetic nervous system, always active. And I didn't really struggle with social anxiety at all through middle school, definitely, through high school a little bit. High school, it would only be occasionally with women and then like upperclassmen or something. But when I got to college is when it really hit, right? And the reason this is right before I got to college, literally like the day before my graduation of high school, I got my heart broken from my first serious relationship, and it completely destroyed my identity. I lost one of my best friends, and I lost my girlfriend at the time. I had not a lot of self-reflection, so I don't really know what to do with myself. I just had this like deep feeling in my chest, and I just like lost kind of like my mojo. I lost my desire to socialize. I lost my desire to do anything but get the comfort from the relationship back. I remember myself looking up on Reddit like, how long would this last, etc. So at that time, all I did is I went to the gym, right? I went to the gym, I was working 2 jobs, try to keep myself busy. Over time, the desire for my woman, the desire for my ex started to fade, but my confidence did not come back, right? And I thought getting validation from women or, hooking up with more women was the solution to that. So I went to University of Iowa. Literally looked up best party schools, schools with the hottest chicks, went to University of Iowa in hopes of relieving this pain, right? It was the biggest pain in my life. Now, I get there, right? High expectation, high hopes, high self-belief. I don't really know that I had lost all this confidence yet. I just felt like trash all this time, right? I didn't really even realize I had social anxiety. But when I got to college, right, was faced with new environments, new people, right? Whether that's the bar scene or just class, I realized I did not have that same mojo, right? I did not have that fluency, that flow. I was always thinking about what I was going to say, thinking about what other people thought of me, and it made me very unsuccessful in building meaningful relationships, whether that's with men and especially women, right? Also got hit with the rude realization that women are going to choose the best men in their environment, and me at that time, freshman me, was not better than the confident upperclassmen. Going from senior in high school being top of the food chain to bottom of the food chain was a hit, and I did not have the success I desired at all. Right? And so this was still an insecurity in me, and I felt like I need to solve it. Only way I could think of, getting women, right? if I just had great sex life and abundance of women, my problems would be solved. So I kept trying, right? I was in a fraternity at the time. We would have events, go out to the bars, and I would get enough confidence and drink enough and watch the how to cold approach videos and try to pick up women, right? Now, it got met very often with rejection because I wasn't confident. Right? My anxiety shined through my speech, my energy, and women can smell that shit from a mile away. Right? An anxious man signifies insecurity, signifies weakness, signifies just an overall lack of confidence, and that is disgusting to women. No woman is attracted to that. They're attracted to calm, confident, abundant energy. Right? And so the feedback when I would get when I would approach these women was negative. A lot of rejection, and my self-identity was already weak, and so I got that negative feedback loop that, oh, I'm not that man, I'm not confident, I'm awkward, I can't pick up chicks, right? And that led me to being even more anxious, be more in my head, and it just kept going down. And I got to a pretty low place here, had very low self-confidence, very low self-worth. This was winter of 2023, fall and winter of 2023, and I go home for Thanksgiving, and I'm with my family, and it translated there, right? Like, they were the people I always felt safe with, but somehow I still felt that anxiety. I still had that feeling of, what does my family think about me? And that is an absolute terrible feeling to have, right? And so the pain got so strong to where I was like, okay, like, this isn't working. It just keep facing rejection, keep trying, keep getting hammered, has not gotten me anywhere. If anything, it's drawn me into a deeper hole. So something has to give, right? Talked to my brother at that time who had a crazy transformation. His wasn't as much social anxiety, he definitely had it, but it was more just overall depression, lethargy, lack of purpose, and he completely changed his life, like oozing confidence. So I asked him, like, what do I do, bro? And he sat me down and introduced me to other aspects of self-development besides just the gym. And going back to the gym, I still had the gym through the times I was socially anxious, right? I would go to the gym every single day, and that was the only time I actually felt good about myself, right? Because I was in good shape, had some caffeine in the system, I was comfortable in that environment, there weren't many threats, and I'm very glad I had that. But it was not enough to give me that confidence. So introduces me to other aspects. Virtually, he gave me so many pathways through which I can improve myself, a lot of which simultaneously. And because the pain of because the pain of my insecurities and lack of confidence was so strong, I hit the ground running, right? I had so much why. I had such a reason to transform and change. And right when I started implementing these things, I transformed. And I'm going to break down all these things in more depth in the video I make, the more of the guide. I'm just giving you guys kind of my story here. Some big ones though were just sexual discipline, mental hygiene, having a new purpose, which is developing myself, actually building confidence from within, and everything else fed into that. My morning routine, my nighttime routine, my new habits, the new things I was learning, the new people I was meeting. And slowly but surely, I started to gain confidence, and with that, I became less socially anxious. Now, I only had a couple weeks of implementing this at college. It was in between Thanksgiving break and winter break, but during this time, I realized that this environment was not for me. I was paying $40,000 a year. The only reason I was there in the first place was the party scene, and so I realized there's nothing stopping me from packing my bags and leaving. Right? I did not need to be there. I didn't have that many close friendships. The only real close one I had 2 buddies, and then my roommate, who lives in my hometown now, and we both moved back actually, right? He didn't feel the need to be there as well, and he's also doing great at the moment. Get back home, and from January to about May or June or May, I was fully locked in, doing the method, improved myself in all aspects, and gained a ton of confidence. A huge amount of attention went into reflection, knowing myself, seeing what's going on in here, like being able to observe those insecurities and where I had those where those traumas and need for validation lied, and also how to just have more control and agency over my mind. Kind of be the one in the driver's seat. Now, as I'm doing all this self-work, my attraction gets a lot higher. I got a lot lower body fat. I was eating a lot healthier, right? I was meditating on a daily basis. My mental hygiene was clean. My aura was great. I was pushing myself out of my comfort zone more. And so overall as a man, I gained just a ton of confidence between January and May. And then the summer comes along. A lot of my friends move home. Everyone's home from college. And the party scene start, right? The festivals, the raves start, the clubbing starts, just hanging out with people starts, and my confidence transferred insanely, right? I would be in social situations now and feel like a new man. I was coming from a place of pure abundance, right? And it was like a drug to me. It was like when I would go out and just not feel that social anxiety, it was literally like a massive drug, especially getting the validation and being able to pick up women. And so for that entire summer, I really just exercised this power. All the self-work I did to eliminate my insecurities was paying off. However, the fall and then the winter comes along, right? It was fall 2023, so I enjoyed 3 months of that. I enjoyed all this, it was great. My confidence was at an all-time high. I was like, my problems are over. I'm eternally confident, right? Now, partying gets over, fall, winter comes along. Fall happens and I get regretfully intertwined with my old ex-girlfriend. Not gonna get too much into the details, but it definitely fucked up. My mental health was a terrible decision and was God, the universe, whatever you wanna call it, slapping me in the face, saying it's time to lock back in. You've had enough. In addition, got in a brutal bar fight, and then also went to a seminar or a convention for the job and the career I was planning on doing, and had found no passion for it. So all that happened right away, and then that confidence left me, right? I felt terrible again. I felt anxious again. The winter was coming along. I didn't know what I was gonna do, right? I was thinking about my ex. I was like, fuck, what the fuck happened? And this is my first experience of a pendulum. Pendulum is basically the fact that life goes up and down, and just as high as you go up, it's just as high as you fall down. And so I realized this confidence was temporary, and it still had something to do with validation from other people, which is not sustainable. I'm gonna fast forward this part, but I spent that entire winter and spring working on a business, not focused on picking up chicks. I was still didn't have my mojo back. I was still pretty low vibration, but I kept pushing myself, kept learning, kept adapting, kept sticking to my word, kept doing the method. And then the next spring comes around, I have a jiu-jitsu fight, I win that. Couple weeks later, going to a festival with a woman I've had on my eye on for a whole year, where we met at a festival back she was in a relationship, but the chemistry between us was insane. We didn't say a word to each other the whole time, but after dating, we both realized that we had been thinking about each other since we last met. Long story short, put my hands on her hips. That was history, right? That ended up being my most recent relationship, which is a year and a half. Unfortunately, it just ended a couple weeks back. However, after everything I had been through that past year, all the pain I endured and just putting my head down and keep improving despite how I feel, paid off in the relationship, right? She respected me heavily. I was able to lead confidently. My social anxiety was damn near non-existent. Now, last chapter, I'm running my business, but after my transformation, I always knew I was meant to do this, right? Coach, create content, help people with my story, my journey, and my wisdom, right? But I was too afraid, I was too anxious, too overthinking to post content. And I knew I couldn't overcome this with the business I was currently in, which is a clean out business. And so I decided to drop that business despite being highly profitable, right? Do door-to-door sales because of how difficult it was, because I knew I still had that slight social anxiety that I needed to cure, right? But I had a foundation of confidence that could be broken with repetition, proving to myself, proving to my nervous system that social interactions are not a threat. Got home from door to door after a couple of months, realized the next step, personal training, learning how to coach clients. Did that for a couple months. Right after that, I posted my first educational content on Instagram, right? Left that to go full in on coaching. And since then, on a daily basis, I have pushed my edge, whether that's with content, whether that's with my service to my client, whether that's with my own self-development. And I've had more growth this year than my first year of self-development. Now, the contrast of the first 6 months of my self-development, I went from like a 3 to like a temporary 10, but that wasn't sustainable confidence. That was just the dopamine high and the validation I was getting at the time, which showed to break down. Anyways, this past year, I have built real foundational confidence. Even though a year ago I didn't have any physical insecurities or sexual insecurities, my insecurity was that I wasn't posting content. And I knew I was meant to do it, but I couldn't, right? And that was my insecurity. Now, I conquered that by just taking the step and going. And like I said, through repetition, I built it. And the reason I think this year has built my confidence so high is because I have forced to get my validation from within. With the content I post, some of it's controversial, some of it's not, but most of it puts me in a vulnerable state, right? And being forced to be in that state, it has forced me to get all of my validation within myself, right? Be self-secure. Now, it's January 5th, 2026, and I could say that I have fully overcome my social anxiety, right? There are rarely any occasions where I feel that feeling in my chest, that feeling that I'm inadequate, that feeling that I need validation, right? With a much higher status man or a very gorgeous woman, my nervous system might say, hey, this is really high stakes, you better perform. But overall, I don't have that feeling of inadequacy. And oh my God, is it freeing, right? I have my own problems now and I will always have my problems, but that feeling of social anxiety and not being internally fulfilled is the worst. And the reason I'm so passionate about what I do is because so many men face this, right? And confidence and self-security is one of the things we have control over. We don't have control over our happiness. We don't have control over the pendulums. A lot of our time, our financial state, we don't have full control over. Confidence is directly built by facing your fears, facing your insecurities, and sticking to your word. And over time, on a repeated basis, and I've seen in my own life, and then in turn the people I coach, how capable people are improving their confidence. And during my time coaching, I have yet to see someone dedicate themselves to improving their confidence and not achieve that, right? I've seen guys go from literal 1s or 2s to 9 and 10s, right? And so this is something we have control over. And the reason insecurities are the foundation of anxiety and securities are the foundation of confidence is because when you are insecure, you inevitably seek validation outside of yourself, right? And if you seek validation outside of yourself, your nervous system tells yourself there's a lot of risk in this social interaction. You have the risk of your self-worth. You have the risk of your confidence. You have the risk of feeling rejected. You have the risk of being exposed. And that's at a biological level. That's your nervous system responding. That's not you consciously thinking it. Most people logically know there's no reason to be anxious, but it is a physiological response, right? And so if you have insecurities, there's no way to outthink it. And that's why I don't think mindsets are the correct solution for this. The mindset you should have is that, hey, there's a reason I feel threats when I go in social situations. Let me figure out why, right? Because that underlying problem, solving that will do so much more than forcing myself through it or trying to mindset my way out of it. And once you have built that foundation of confidence, you're fully self-secure, is when you can build upon that. So say you get your self-worth from yourself, a majority of it, right? We still have some desire for validation from other people, because if the tribe doesn't like us, that means we're dead, right? It's a survival instinct. But most of your validation comes from yourself. Now what? How do you become that top 1%, that top 10% of charisma and confidence? From there, you start to shape your identity, right? Every single action you do, every single thought you have gets sunken into the subconscious and starts to form your identity. And when it's repeated on a daily, hourly, weekly basis, right, that becomes who you are. Now, if your day is filled with things that reinforce the identity of I am that man, I stick to my word, right, I push myself, I'm moving towards a higher purpose, right, your identity will start to move with so much motion. There will be so much convictions behind the words you say, versus on a daily basis, you don't stick to your word, you seek comfort. Deep down, you know you're not pushing towards those higher goals. Your identity will reinforce yourself. I don't have that self-belief, right? I am not that man. I am not that man. And then it will inevitably try to cling back on to that validation from others to reassure you are that man. Right? So first things first, build the foundation. Eliminate all physical, mental, sexual, spiritual insecurities, which I'm gonna break down in my full guide, right? That's phase 1, and then phase 2 goes on to pushing yourself on a daily basis. Pushing your edge, finding a purpose, fulfilling it, and then helping other brothers along the same journey. That is the method, all right? I hope you guys enjoyed this. My camera is about to overheat, so I'm gonna end it here, but I wanna let you brothers all know, I know the feeling of social anxiety. I know how helpless it can feel. I know how self-degrading it can feel, but I want you to know it is possible for every man to completely overcome it. And I don't even want you to focus on how fast can I overcome it, because like I said, it's a continuum, right? And so you shouldn't be thinking, okay, what's the end points? Right? You should be thinking, how can I move closer and closer to more and more confidence? Further and further from insecurity, more and more towards self-assuredness. All right, love you boys. I'm gonna start working on this next one. Until next time.